do you have any books you'd like to unhaul? Honestly should have gotten rid of them sooner, but I just didn't, versus spending my time reading a book that I'm just not going to enjoy. And although I tend to be really sentimental about things, turned up having 2 copies. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle. I read a lot of different books and I also have a disability, and today what I figured we could do is a book unhaul. Also, I just want to mention I got my hair cut and I'm really loving that it's shorter. It feels really nice. I don't feel like Cousin It anymore, so that is always a bonus. But we are going to be doing a book unhaul. To be honest, my bookshelves, as you can tell, are jam-packed. And after going and doing some cleaning that you would have seen in my romance/arc bookshelf video, I kind of realized that there were some books I was holding on to that after my last unhaul, I had just kind of been hanging on to them, and I'm like, you know what? Some of these I don't really want to keep anymore. So we're going to go through some of those. Some of these books will be ones that I have already read, and then some will also be ones that I've just been hanging on to and honestly should have gotten rid of them sooner, but I just didn't. So first one I have here is Hestia Strikes a Match by Christine Griot. This one I read a few months back and I did really enjoy it. It kind of read a little bit as an older woman Sex in the City type of book, and it was enjoyable, but to be honest, I don't foresee that I would probably read this book again. So I think someone else would probably enjoy reading this one too. I don't see too many people talk about this book, and honestly they definitely should, because it was a really fun read and I very much enjoyed it. Then another one I have is The Lake House by Sarah Beth Durst. This was another book that I read I think maybe last year, if I'm not mistaken, and it was good. However, it wasn't one of my favorite thrillers that I've read. There were a few moments here and there where I was like, I think I would have enjoyed it if it took this direction. And because this wasn't a book that I absolutely loved, I know that there's a ton of other books that I could go and have on my bookshelf that mean a little bit more to me, and I just don't really feel attached to this book either, so this one will also be going to a new home. Lots of years ago, I actually picked up this book called The Latte Factor by David Buck, and I'm not someone that's really a fan of self-help books or anything like that. However, I picked this one up because I was like, you know what, I need help doing money management types of things, but I still never ended up going and picking this book up. And to be honest, I feel like there's more efficient ways that I could probably do things versus spending my time reading a book that I'm just not going to enjoy. So I'm also going to unhaul this one. Who knows, this one would probably help someone else out more than it ever could help out me. Another book I'm going to unhaul is Deathless Divide by Justina Ireland. I think I read this one at the beginning of the year, and although I loved Dread Nation so much, unfortunately the second book was just a huge miss for me. It wasn't one of my favorites and I just didn't have a great time with it as much as Dread Nation. So I will be keeping the first book but unhauling the second book. Then another book we're going to be unhauling is Don't Let In the Cold by Kelly Park. And I think I read this one at the beginning of the year. It was really good, and I did find that I had a hard time putting this book down, but I just wasn't a fan of the main character. I loved all the other characters in the book, but the main character just annoyed me a little bit too much with her wishy-washiness. So I think I will unhaul this one, although I did enjoy it, and if you're curious about it, I would recommend reading it, especially when there's a blizzard outside. I feel like a blizzard paired with this book would be perfect. Then I actually have a book from Charles's bookshelf, and this one is just like a fitness workout book. They had it for a while and they never used it, and when they were going and cleaning up their office, they're like, hey, you had a pile of books that you were gonna unhaul, can I go and add this one? I was like, sure, why not? So this one is also going to go and be unhauled as well. I'm also going to get rid of a few books that I've had from problematic authors. One is going to be Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman isn't a great person, and although I do love Coraline, and Coraline is one of my absolute favorite movies, I don't feel comfy having this book on my bookshelf anymore, and so I will be unhauling this one as well as this book. And yeah, that's all I have to say there. So these will also be leaving my bookshelves. Moving on to some other books, I also have A Beautiful Mind, A Beautiful Life, The Bub's Guide to Being Unstoppable by Lindsay by Lindsay Sang. I forgot how to say her last name. Is it Song or Sang? But anyway, if anyone grew up going and watching videos from Bubs Beauty, you might recognize the name of this author. And I honestly love Bubs. I've followed her since I think middle school or high school. And although I love her, I still watch any of her videos or her posts that she puts on Instagram. I just don't really feel the need to hang on to this book, especially since it was in some older chapters of her life. And so I will also be saying goodbye to this book as well. Then we have some books by Nicholas Sparks. And to be honest, I do probably plan on reading these books at some point in my life. However, I think I've mentioned in the past that certain quality of books kind of mess a little bit with my germaphobe side, and these books have kind of had a lot of wear and tear. They weren't ones that I actually ever purchased for myself, and so I think I'm just gonna unhaul them. They have been sitting on my bookshelves for the longest time, and I'm just not a fan of mass paperback books. To be honest, reading them is something that's just doesn't fit my hands well or work with my hands well. My hands tend to get a little bit more cramped and don't feel the best after reading books that are set like this. So yeah, I'm gonna unhaul these and maybe go and pick one of them up through the library and maybe listen to them via Libby. Then another book that I just don't really have the desire to hang on to anymore is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. I think I only ever read a few pages of this book and just never really picked it up again. I do very much love the movie that is based off of this book. It is one of my absolute favorites and was one of my comfort movies, especially when I was dealing with some difficult moments throughout college. But I think the time has really passed for me to really feel the desire to go and pick up this book. And with a lot of these books that I have in my office, on my bookshelves, a lot of them mean certain things to me and are books that usually I do have the desire and the want to go and pick up. And this just really isn't one of them. I've kind of laid this book on bookshelves that aren't really my most important ones that I enjoy looking at. So I think it is time to unhaul this one as well. Next, we have a manga, which is the life-changing manga of Tidying Up, a magical story by Marie Kondo. I picked this one up, I think, from a little gift store that wasn't necessarily a bookstore, and I thought it was so fun. But I've only read it once. It's not really one of those books that I think I will ever pick up again. I probably should have just seen if I could have picked this one up through the library, just because, like I said, this was only a book that I first saw myself reading through once and never picking up again. So that is also why I'm unhauling this one as well. Now, you might have seen this book in a recent book haul that I had, and to be honest, this was completely my fault. I will also put the disclaimer that I am awful with numbers. Horrible with numbers. So when I was looking through the Natural series on my bookshelf and seeing which ones I was missing, I did not realize that I already had book 2, but it was book 3 and book 4 that were the ones that I needed to order. So I accidentally ended up getting 2 copies of book 2, and trust me, I did a facepalm when I realized that. I have since went and scanned all the books in my library, so hopefully if I'm away from home or something, I can easily go and look at my app and see which ones I own. But yeah, that is why this book is in the pile. It's because I turned up having 2 copies and I really don't need 2 of the same copy of the same book. Then another book that I'm going to unhaul is Shine Your Icy Crown by Amanda Lovelace. This was a book that I received from someone that I'm just no longer friends with anymore, and although I tend to be really sentimental about things, this one kind of holds some bitter memories, and honestly, I don't know why I didn't unhaul it before, but now I'm gonna do so, and who knows, this might be something that someone enjoys reading. I do really enjoy poems, which this book has, but like I said, it just doesn't have some great memories and things that just make me sad to think about. So yeah, I'd like to go and kind of for my own mental health unhaul this book. So when it comes to my bookshelf and unhauling books, there are some that I probably will never go and unhaul, and a few of which are ARCs and publisher mail, but as well as any gifts that I'm kindly given by people in the community. And There is one exception, and that is going to be this book. So it's What to Do When You Get Dumped, A Guide to Unbreaking Your Heart by Susie Hopkins and Hallie Bateman. So this is probably the second book that I ever received as publisher mail. And to be honest, I never requested this book. I put in a request for a completely different book. And when I got this, I was very, very confused and kind of was scratching my head because, as you know, I'm in a very healthy relationship, a relationship that is actually going to be moving into having a wedding next year. So the fact that I got this book was one of those moments where I'm like, wait, come again? Why was I sent this book? So this is just one of those things where I'm like, I don't really know why I have this book, and I don't really have a reason to keep it. And also, if I were to re-gift this book to a friend, I would kind of feel awful about myself. Like, although this is a self-help book, and this was written by a mother who was dealing with a really difficult breakup, I just don't feel right going and ever gifting this book to someone. So I think it's just one of those things where I have to go and unhaul it, because that's going to be the only way that I can get this book out of my library without feeling guilty for trying to re-gift it, if that makes sense. This was a weird tangent. This was a weird tangent and weird bubbling of words. But yeah, so that's why this book is in this haul, and this is one of the only books that I will probably ever unhaul that is publisher mail, because I try to keep those as little memories and little like trophies type of thing, because I am sentimental, but this is not one that I feel any of those justifications to keep. Next, I have Womb City by Totoro Tamase. And this was a book that I read, I think, towards the beginning of the year, and I was super excited to go and read this book. It sounded like everything that would be right up my alley. However, it just was a book that didn't work for me. I started reading it physically and then went and switched over to listening to it as an audiobook, and the book just kind of confused me. I felt like I wasn't smart enough, but also just the way the words flowed and everything, it just didn't hit right for me. And although when I did go and film my recap for this book, I did say that maybe I'll go and pick it up again at some point, but I've kind of been thinking about this a lot, and it's like I'd rather spend my time rereading books that I absolutely love, that I had a great time with, or of course reading books that I've never read before. And rereading a book that I just didn't really have a great time with and rated it pretty low is just not something that I have any desire to do. So that is why I'm also unhauling this book as well. Then we have Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. So with this one, when my fiance and I first started dating, every now and then we'd go to the bookstore together. And I think I have some images where Charles would actually end up holding a huge stack of books. Half of them were mine and then a few were theirs. And one of the points during our bookstore date, we decided, oh, hey, let's maybe do like a little buddy read, just you and me. We'll be a tiny little book club together. And when we were looking through books, this was one that we picked up. And we did try to go and read it, but I remember when I was reading it, it just wasn't really making sense for me. It seemed like it was written in third person, and while I was reading it, just none of it was making sense. I feel like I was rereading the same paragraphs over and over again, and none of it was hitting. And so when I was going through my bookshelves, I actually talked to Charles, and I was like, I'm very sentimental, and I do really like the idea of memories of us trying to do a little book club together. However, this book was just not one that I really enjoyed. I'm really running out of space on my fantasy bookshelves. And so when we were talking about it, they said it was okay for me to unhaul it, and they'll be keeping their own copy because they'd like to kind of take another stab at it to try to read the book again. But I don't really think I will, because like I said, it just wasn't for me, and the writing style just didn't work. Then I have a book that I kind of went back and forth on, and that is Bossed Up by Emily Aries. This one I actually got when I still worked in the office at my current company, and some coworkers and I went to a few speaking events by this author and then went to the signing together. And there were some fun memories with that. However, When I got this book, I was in a very, very, very toxic relationship, both mentally and almost to the point of physically. And this book doesn't have very great memories attached to it, aside from, of course, going to a fun book event with my coworkers. But also, I just don't really have any desire for this book or to ever read it. It is a book that is a signed edition and has my name in it, so I do feel a little bit weird about unhauling it just because it has that personalized piece, but I do really want to rid myself of not so great memories, and so I have a question for y'all. If you have a book that has been personalized for you, how do you go and unhaul it? Do you donate it to a free little library? What is the process that you do? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments down below. And then last couple of books that I'm actually gonna unhaul would be Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole and Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. And the reason why I'm unhauling these two books is because I actually did get some really beautiful sprayed edge versions of these books as publisher mail. And because these aren't like a specific special edition or anything like that, I feel like it's okay for me to go and unhaul these. These aren't ones that I'm gonna regret unhauling later because they are special editions or anything like that. So that is why I'm getting rid of these. I just have duplicates and I don't really feel the need to have that many of this book, especially since they are thicker and I'm already running out of space on my fantasy bookshelves. Those are all the books that I am planning on unhauling. I do feel pretty good about the books that I'm unhauling currently. There were a few others that I am kind of considering unhauling, but most of them are manga that I'm not quite sure if I do or don't. It mostly has to do with the fact that their covers are a little bit questionable. So I want to reread the books themselves first before I figure out like, all right, this was okay stuff back in the day, but now these aren't really ones that I want on my bookshelf, if that makes sense. But let's see how many books I'm going to be unhauling. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we're going to be unhauling 21 books. One of them was my fiance's, but I feel good about this. And there's also going to be a used bookstore sale that we're going to go to in the coming weeks. So I'm also excited to go and do that because there's a few books that I've been meaning to snag and just haven't had the chance to do so. So that will be fun to go through a used bookstore and seeing what fun books we can go and find. But if you've ended up going and cleaning your bookshelves and decided to unhaul any books, I'd love to hear which ones you ended up going and removing. And maybe what we can do, if you've gotten this far in the video, maybe go and leave like, I think we've probably done a broom before in the past, but I feel like a broom is very fitting for this one just because it's, you know, decluttering, it's unhauling and everything. So leave a broom emoji in the comments if you've gotten this far and you don't know what to say and you just want to leave a nice little comment, because that does really help my channel out, as well as liking or subscribing to my channel. It just kind of shows the YouTube algorithm that you're enjoying my content and helps out this little person on the tiny corner of the internet. But as always, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I love you all so, so much. And always remember that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Bye, friends. Yeah, you know when it's filming time, don't you? Thank you. Yes? Oh my gosh. Yeah. You are so silly.